Well, I'm talking about a 50-cent an hour increase on a minimum wage that less than 1% of Americans get paid. So I don't know too many small businesses are going to be impacted dramatically with that. If you throw on top of what we're talking about, which is putting forth a pro-growth package along with that will stimulate economic growth, hopefully wages, which have been stagnant for a while. I don't think minimum wage will actually even enter into it. I think you're looking at something that if you either support a minimum wage, if you don't, and when minimum wage covers less than 1% of employees in America, it's hard to say you're for any kind of minimum wage if you're not for an increase. And so I choose not to be in the position that that there should be no minimum wage law. And I think that's de facto what you're arguing if you're not for any kind of increase. And again, we proposed 50 cents an hour for 3 years, and take a look at it and see what happens after that.
Your thoughts about what happened yesterday with Rand Paul in regards to the filibuster?
I didn't see the filibuster, but I don't think at least I didn't see anything reported in which he mentioned anybody who was actually rights were actually violated by any of the things he suspects could happen. What we do know is that hundreds, if not more than hundreds, of people have been thwarted from doing things that are dangerous to this country by this program, and so the idea that the program is dangerous has not been proven, that's effective has been proven, and that I understand the court has said what it said, but I think we need to look at how we can structure a program that can still provide security to our country and respect the rights of privacy rights of people.
Senator, you're not in the race yet, but we know you're seriously thinking about it. Your message first sort of resonated in 2012 in Oklahoma. Now you're back here. How's your message changed in that 4 years?
You know, it's interesting because by the time we got to Oklahoma, which was Super Tuesday, we had become a little bit more focused on our message. I think that's one of the reasons I always remind people that after the first 5 carve-out states, we won or tied 12 of the next 24 primaries. And we did so really flat-footed because, as I mentioned, we won the Iowa caucus, but we actually didn't get recognized until 2 weeks later. So we sort of came from, as I said, flat-footed and against someone who was spending a lot more money than us. And I think our message and the messenger resonated. And I believe that the message that you heard out here today, probably not as well crafted today, 4 years ago as I hope it was today, but I think there were elements of that stuck with people. And I always use a story when we wrote this book called Blue Collar Conservative, and I was in Des Moines for a book signing last summer, and the woman walked up and pushed the book on my table, and I said, "Who should I make this out to?" And she said, "Janice." I said, "Well, nice to meet you, Janice." And she said, "Oh, that's not my name." I said, "Well, who's Janice?" She said, "That's my hairdresser." I said, "Your hairdresser?" She said, Yeah, she loves you." I said, "Really?" She said, "Oh, yeah, we disagree on everything. I mean, she's a big liberal, but she loves you." I just said, "Well, I got to know." I said, "Why does she love me?" And without missing a beat, she says, "Us, because you're for the little guy. The Republican Party's for the little guy. We're for the little guy in the womb. We're for the little guy. We're for the poor and that wants to rise in society. We don't do a very good job of communicating that we care and putting forth policies that do so." And I think that's something that I think I bring to the table.
Being in Oklahoma, a lot of it is on energy. I mean, that's our backbone here. National conversations increasing on fracking. What are your thoughts on regulating fracking?
I'm very comfortable coming from Pennsylvania, which does a fair amount of fracking, that it is a safe way to extract oil and gas. And we need to continue to have oversight and continue to study it. But there are almost, I won't say, there are insignificant percentage of instances where fracking has been dangerous to the environment. It's not, and it's an incredibly powerful way of improving the quality of life. I saw a number recently that said that lower income or lower middle income people in America spend 40% of their disposable income on energy. I mean, you know what gas prices cut in half mean for them? I mean, that's real disposable income for them. It's a real improvement in the quality of life. And the jobs that come with it, the pipeline jobs, all of the things that happen there are just tremendous. They turned a whole section of my state from one that was marginal farmland up near the New York border, that was constantly high unemployment, high levels of poverty. The highest levels of unemployment in my state when I was a senator were in my rural counties. It's not the case anymore, and that's because of the energy revolution that's happened up there, and it's happening in other places. And the fact that we can become energy self-sufficient, as I mentioned out there, that we can hopefully begin to exporting crude oil, so we can get it refined promptly and get a better value for our producers. Those are the kinds of policies and others that we need to look at in order to make the energy revolution.
So Oklahoma has now taken over as the earthquake. We have more earthquakes now than California, 3.0 or higher, and that's now been connected to wastewater injection, part of the fracking process. Have you been looking into that at all about?
As I said, we need to continue to look at it. I mean, wastewater injection is one methodology of getting rid of wastewater. There are others. You can treat the water, and you can, as we do a lot of treatment. We did a lot of treatment in Pennsylvania, and a lot of drillers still treat the water instead of re-injecting it. And that's something we should certainly look at. But it's not a reason not to frack. I mean, you don't have to re-inject water. There's ways you can treat wastewater without re-injecting it.
Senator, you touched on this a minute ago before some of us got in here. Are polling averages the best way to determine qualification for the debates? And do you think that 10 is a fair number for Fox News to cap that first debate at?
I would make the argument that I'm probably the best person to comment on this. In January of 2012, I was at 4% in the national polls, and I won the Iowa caucuses. I don't know if I was last in the polls, but I was pretty close to last. And so the idea that a national poll has any relationship as to the viability of a candidate, ask Rudy Giuliani that. Ask Phil Gramm that. I mean, you can go on down the list of folks who were doing really well in national polls and didn't win a single state and were not a viable candidate because they couldn't. So I just think it's like saying, well, is it hot outside? Well, let's go inside and measure temperatures. It has nothing to do with how hot it is outside. You have to go to the place where the temperature matters, and it matters in the early primary states. And if you're going to use polls, and by the way, I wouldn't. I mean, I'm someone who believes that we should have an inclusive process. That if you're a United States senator, if you're a governor, if you're a woman who ran a Fortune 500 company, and you're running a legitimate campaign for president, then you should have the right to be on the stage with everybody else.
So what about
and so the idea that we're going to arbitrarily, and it's arbitrary, someone at 1.15 is in, someone at 1.14 is out. That to me is not a rational way, and particularly given the fact that they're using national polls, which isn't a legitimate way, in my opinion, to determine viability of a candidate. So I'm hopeful that people will listen to the comments. I mean, I'm sure they put this out there to get comments, and I'm not criticizing or condemning them. I'm really not. I think hopefully they put it out there, and they're going to listen to what the comments are, trying to factor those in and determine what is the right way. I've suggested randomly splitting it in half and having half the group go up at one time and the other half going at the other time, and having a debate with a lot less people on the stage, maybe 6, 7, 8, whatever it would be. And having two debates right back to back. I don't see it's usually a 2.5 hour process. Make it a 3 hour process and divide it up into two. That way everybody's involved. It's a random draw. People get a chance to see the candidates in a little bit better form than just 15-second answers or 30-second answers. There's a better way to do this that's more inclusive and fairer to candidates who, I mean, some of whom, as you know, are just recently thinking about getting into the race, and to put them at a disadvantage. I don't think it's not whether it's fair to the candidates or not. It has nothing to do with the candidates. It has to do with the American people. It's what's fair to them. What's fair to them to be able to see some really sharp people who, at least at this point, are most decidedly not going to be in unless things change, and that's not a good thing for the process, in my opinion.
Senator, what do you offer the Hispanic electorate that the other candidate, the Hispanic candidate, can do?
Yeah, one of the things that I really focus a lot on is the importance of people who are trying to rise in society. And if it's like, my father came to this country as an immigrant. My grandfather came here as an immigrant, and started out at the bottom of the economic ladder and climbed their way to the top. That's how the American dream works. That's the typical path. I mean, I know that we do bring some people over who are highly skilled, but it's a very small percentage. And so the idea of creating an economy that's geared toward helping workers, particularly those who don't have college degrees, to be able to rise in society, that's very important for the recent immigrant community, and to make sure that there's not unfair competition, that folks who are in this country and here legally have the opportunity to rise. That to me is, again, very positive for recent immigrants in this country.
Do you support the immigration reform?
No, I have a different viewpoint. I think that the best way we can help people in this country who are here legally is to give them the opportunity to rise and not unfairly bring into this country people who are going to compete to keep their wages down, because you're hurting those families. So I think it really is. And again, I say this: my father was an immigrant to this country. He spent 7 years in fascist Italy without his father, because under the immigration laws of 1921 and 24, he wasn't allowed to come. And so he didn't come. And he spent 7 years with Benito Mussolini trying to drill fascism into his head. And I always used to ask him, I said, how it must have been horrible. And he always used to say the same thing to me: America was worth the wait. And I think that's what we have to say, that we need to do this to make sure that everybody is strong here in this country, and that everybody who comes here can participate and rise and participate in that strong middle of America again.
We've got to go.
Okay, thank you all.
Thanks, Senator. You bet.